Can you name the benefits of fossil fuel in and of itself?
Can I name?
As an energy source?
Well, it is dense, and it keeps the lights on, keeps transportation going. Are you talking about transporting fuels?
No, ma'am. I want you to speak. Well, I was going to follow up with the numerous reports by the Federal Protective Services officers describing suspicious occurrences of UAPs over nuclear facilities.
Oh.
The fine for an illicit bulb is $542 per bulb. You're shaking your head.
That's news to me.
Jennifer Granholm, the Secretary of Energy, was back in Congress to defend the Biden administration's war on fossil fuels, enforcing so-called green energy policies on the American people, because the free market time and time again rejects the current alternatives. I'm not going to add much narrative to this, as her testimony is the important part of the video. Keep in mind that Granholm has been caught lying under oath in Congress about her ownership of individual stocks, something she then later brushed off as just an oops moment.
Let me ask you about some disturbing ethics reports related to your department. This is from the Wall Street Journal. U.S. ethics officials in recent years have warned 1/3 of the Energy Department's senior officials own stock related to the agency's work. More than 130 officials in the Energy Department collectively reported about 2,700 trades of shares, bonds, and options in companies that ethics officers labeled as related to the agency's work. Do you own individual stocks, Madam Secretary?
No, I'm invested in mutual funds.
Good.
A U.S. Senator is calling for an investigation into former Michigan Governor and current Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm. It comes as Granholm sent a letter to the Senate Energy Panel saying she owned stocks as recently as May. Granholm testified in April she didn't own any stocks.
I'm going to get into a topic which I know that's not going to be popular, but I think it's really important. Since taking office in January of 2021, Secretary Granholm has violated the Hatch Act multiple times. She's owned Proterra stock while her boss, President Biden, repeatedly promoted the company. We saw this huge payout. She admitted 3 months after she took office. Her husband owned Ford stock while she personally promoted the company's work with official resources, and she cashed in on millions of dollars after these illegal transactions and failure to disclose obvious conflicts were revealed. Do you believe that any Department of Energy or other federal employee violating this rule should resign or be removed from office for this position?
First of all, let me say that we take ethics.
That's a yes or no question. Do you think if someone violates the ethical laws set forth in this, that you said you signed a statement, an ethical statement that you would comply with the laws, do you think that a DOE employee or other federal employee who violates these laws should step down from that position? That's a yes or no? If they violate the ethics laws set forth,
I understand what you're trying to do here.
I'm asking you a specific question. Okay, so you're not going to answer the question.
You have made a number of allegations that I feel against me personally.
This is my time, Mr.
I know,
Chairman.
but you've made these out there, and I feel it is important to respond.
Let me just tell you, this is what you did not answer the yes or no question. You obviously believe that it's okay to violate the ethics rules.
Of course I do not believe it's okay to violate ethics laws.
So now I'm going to play the highlights of her testimony. Enjoy Granholm explaining how they waste the money that the government confiscates from you.
In July of last year, the Department of Energy made manufacturing or selling most incandescent light bulbs illegal. In the U.S., violators who manufacture an illicit light bulb are charged a penalty of $542 per bulb. To add insult...
I'm sorry, can you say that one more time?
Yeah, the fine for an illicit bulb is $542 per bulb. You're shaking your head.
That's news to me.
You might want to look into that.
In response to a question a little while ago about the sale of oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, you said that that was in response to the war in Ukraine. Is that correct?
Yes.
The first sale under the Biden administration occurred in November 2021. Sold 50 million barrels in an attempt to lower gasoline prices. That's 3 months before the war began. So I think you need to reevaluate your answer. By the way, the price of a gallon of gas in December of 2020 was $2.28. December 21, it was $3.41. This according to the Energy Information Administration. December 22, it was $3.32. So The administration sold 50 million barrels plus the additional barrels they sold later, as you say, because of the war in Ukraine, to affect gasoline prices by 9 cents. And by the way, according to EIA, the price of a gallon of regular gasoline right now is $3.73, $1.45 a gallon higher than it was in December 2020.
I want to go back to a colleague with the gentleman from Louisiana, Mr. Higgins, because he went down a line of questioning with you about the administration's pause on liquid natural gas. For decades, the Department of Energy's position on liquefied natural gas has been that it is safe, it is clean, and it is actually in the nation's interest for it to be procured and then also used in the United States and obviously transported and traded around the globe. In short, what has changed at the Department of Energy?
Yeah, the only thing that has changed is that the volumes that have increased so much, we need to take another look. It's not that the ones that have been approved are not in the nation's interest. They were and they are, and they're going to continue to operate. It's the question of how much more new expansion and what will be the impact in the United States. So if we export our natural gas, what does that do for, if we export, we produce right now about 100 BCF of natural gas, a little bit more. If we export the amount that's authorized currently, which is 48 BCF, that's about half. What does that do to prices at home? That's a question.
Let me ask you this question. Do you believe that just in basic supply and demand, that more supply on the market actually decreases prices? And wouldn't a decreased price actually be to the benefit of the public interest?
For sure it would be.
So then what are we talking about, Secretary?
So this is what we have to look at. So one of the questions that we are looking at, we also have to take a look at what it does for global supply, our allies, all of that.
And again, this is a good conversation, but you know, congressional hearings, our time is limited.
Yes, sir.
Considering what is happening right now in Ukraine, isn't it in the public's interest here in the United States to increase exports of liquefied natural gas to cut down the ability of the Russian regime to actually earn money in the open market?
We are exporting natural gas. We are not stopping that.
Hold on, Secretary, hold on a minute. I'm gonna reclaim my time because I got 18 seconds now. We're not in a debate. This is a hearing, but you have put a pause. And you're saying it's in the public interest, but you can't really identify what the public interest is because it's in the public's interest for prices to go down. It is in the American public interest to try to limit the ability of the Russian regime to earn more money on the open market with their resources. Wouldn't you agree with that?
The pause does not affect that. Everything is still going forward.
The price does affect their ability to earn money to wage war, Madam Secretary. You know that just like I do.
It does not right now. This pause is for a brief period of time to update a study. It doesn't
How long is the
affect
pause?
any of that. It will be finished.
I would argue, Madam Secretary, that the pause that you are doing is against the law because you have not finalized your parameters and what you're looking at. And any events of that being finalized, you do need to execute the permits that are waiting. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Can you name the benefits of fossil fuel in and of itself?
Can I name
as an energy source?
Well, it is dense, and it keeps the lights on, keeps transportation going. It's an important part of our energy mix.
It's cheap, it's reliable, it's abundant, it's predictable, it's distributable, right?
It's all of that, and it needs to be cleaned.
And so when you have benefits to the overall benefits, when you talk about net zero and when our climate friends, they don't really include the personal benefits or the economic benefits. Can you name some economic benefits that come from fossil fuels?
Well, clearly our economy has been built upon fossil fuels. Our economy is driven by fossil fuels.
Tennessee is a massive hub for nuclear energy. Is the Biden administration supportive of new nuclear deployment, especially the small modular reactors?
We are.
And can you tell me how y'all are helping with that deployment?
We thank very much Congress's funding in the 24 budget for small modular reactors, as well as the approval to be able to advance nuclear reactors, different designs. We've got about $12 billion that we are funding nuclear writ large, including the uranium strategy and the HALEU strategy that will be the fuel for the small modular reactors.
Can you give me a timeline? They keep telling me 10 years before those are rolled out, and that was about 5 years ago.
Well, I sure hope not. I know the Nuclear Regulatory Commission has approved a design of one of the small modular reactors and others that are in the mix. That's the first step, of course. But we are eager to partner with utilities, the tech community, who are obviously going to be needing clean baseload power and could have small modular reactors attached to, for example, data centers. That kind of strategy, we're
Do you have a
very eager.
timeline? Could you give me a date
Well,
when we're going to see? We're
it
going to turn
depends
the
on
switch on one of these.
Here's what we'd like to see is that the utilities step up to be able to do this, because
All right.
it's the utilities who want to do it. But it's not certainly not the federal government that's holding it back.
Let me switch gears. What is the responsibility of the Federal Protective Services within the Nuclear Security Administration?
Are you talking about transporting fuels?
No, ma'am. I want you to speak. Well, I was going to follow up with the numerous reports by the Federal Protective Services officers describing suspicious occurrences of UAPs over nuclear facilities.
Oh. Let me just say, the Defense Department has said there is no evidence of UFOs, et cetera, or aliens in the United States. However, at those sites, there may be drones that may be nefarious. And so we are definitely looking at that and making sure that our national security sites are protected. We have a whole program related to countering drones that may be coming from
Well,
areas.
this isn't about drones, and this is prior to drones even. What protocols does the Department of Energy have for reporting and responding to any UAP sightings near nuclear infrastructure? And people joke about this, but I get a lot of questions about this concerning this and about this hearing today from my constituents, so I would appreciate you answering that if there are any protocols.
Well, certainly there are protocols whenever we see anything unusual around our nuclear sites or our national security sites writ large.
Okay, we'll switch gears. The proper use of the reserve is the proper use of the reserve, the Strategic Petroleum Reserve in particular, considering its intended purpose is to provide an emergency stockpile of crude oil to protect against significant supply distributions from war or natural disasters. Is that the proper use of that reserve?
It is.
Okay. Should the U.S. face, if say the U.S. were to face an actual military threat, how would you describe our ability to respond to extreme energy disruptions?
We would have an ability to respond. We have the largest reserve in the world right now.
Okay. What's your strategy to help lower the prices at the gas pump without robbing our emergency reserves? Seems we do these things around election times, and
No,
both parties are
the reason why barrels were sold from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve in 2022 was because Russia invaded Ukraine and there was a disruption in global supply. That emergency caused the president to release barrels so that he could temper that global supply disruption, including asking our allies from around the world to do the same, which they did.
How many of our military bases in Europe depend on or utilize Russian energy?
Our bases in Europe?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm not aware.
Okay, good deal. Under your leadership, the Department of Energy has targeted gas stoves, washing machines, refrigerators, and clothes dryers based on what was called unquantified benefits related to climate and public health. How do you balance the meager, unquantified benefits of these rules with the massive cost burdens imposed on American manufacturers and consumers?
First of all, they are quantified. Americans will save $2 trillion in energy savings because their appliances are more efficient. We're required to do that under...
Yes, ma'am, but the poor folks have to, when they do this, they have to buy these things. I think we're taking that, and I know the corporations love it when y'all put these new rules and regulations in, ma'am, but I really wished we had a little more time, and I wish you would show up when we ask you to. I think that shows a lot of arrogance, and Tennesseans are reminded of this leadership every time they go to the pump, and you all should be ashamed, I think, for your lack of accountability to Congress by not showing up when you're asked. I mean, we had to threaten you with a subpoena just to get y'all here, so I yield back.
We're going to be moving rather quickly today, so I'm going to ask you to focus here. Has the Department of Energy determined whether exporting LNG to our allies around the world is in the public interest? Yes or no?
We're in the middle of a study
We're in the middle of
updating our assessment of what is in the public
Would that be a
interest.
no?
We're in the middle of updating our
So you have
assessment.
not yet determined?
It will be complete in the
That
first
will
quarter
be a
of
no,
next year.
ma'am. Please. Let's not effort to filibuster each other. I ask you a simple question. Has the Department of Energy determined whether exporting LNG to our allies around the world is in the public interest?
And I'm answering in a simple way. We are in the middle of updating our assessment.
That would be a no. Have you made the touchdown? Have you got to the end zone? Well, we're working on it.
We're in the middle of the play, sir.
Down. That would be no. You have not made it to the end zone yet. This is what we're dealing with, Mr. Chairman. We can't get a straight answer out of this administration. We'll see. You're on record today. Why have you issued a long-term ban on export permit approvals prior to determining whether or not exporting LNG is within the public interest?
Number one, we have not issued a ban. Number two, it is not long-term. It is a pause to update our assessment. The assessment will be done by the first quarter of next year.
Why have you issued the ban according to your
It is not a ban.
determination?
It is not a ban, sir.
We're not going to get a straight answer out of you today, are we?
It is
Mr.
not a ban,
Secretary?
sir. That is a
What
straight answer.
statutory, it is a ban. What statutory authority do you claim to have to pause issuing permits? I'll use your language, to pause issuing permits. What statutory authority?
The Natural Gas Act requires that we determine whether authorizations for export of liquefied natural gas are in the public interest. We are determining what is in the public
Precisely.
interest.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to enter into the record what I'm about to read. Citing from Section 3 of the Natural Gas Act, Title 15, U.S. Code 717, Bravo, under Commerce and Trade, exportation of or importation of natural gas, LNG terminals, under paragraph alpha, mandatory authorization order. It says, and I quote, "The Commission shall issue such order upon application unless, after opportunity for hearing, it finds," not trying to find, in the process of finding, talking about finding, writing about finding, it finds that the proposed exportation or importation will not be consistent with the public interest. Mr. Chairman, I ask it to be entered into the record.
Without objection, so ordered.
In the Natural Gas Act, as I've just stated, it clearly states that you shall issue permits unless you find that it's not in the public interest, which has not yet happened. And yet you have mandated a pause. You have not issued permits. How can you pause permits and approvals if you've not determined that exporting LNG is or is not in the public interest?
We are updating our assessment to make that exact determination, sir.
Is that your answer?
Yes.
That's your answer. I ask you how.
How? Because the Act
saying you're
says
updating.
unless. The Act says
I've
unless it's
clearly
in the
stated,
public
ma'am,
interest.
The law requires you. Does the law require you to issue permits unless you have determined that it's not in the public interest?
Correct.
All right. Well, have you determined that it's not in the public interest?
That's why we're doing the
No,
assessment.
you have not.
That's why we're
And
doing
yet
the
you
assessment,
have-
sir.
And yet you have paused permits. The Obama administration conducted a study in 2014 and 15. During that study, the DOE continued to process non-FTA export authorization applications while updating its studies. You have precedent established by a former Democrat president in your department that states that if you have pending applications that have been completed and are standing by, then you should move forward while you're in the process of not quite getting to the end zone on determining whether or not it's in the public interest. It's clear to me that the American men and women around the country are watching today, and that we recognize that you do not have the authority nor the precedence to take the actions that you have indeed taken. This pause, Mr. Chairman, jeopardizes billions of dollars of interest, American jobs, American families, and a clean, reliable energy source that contributes to our national security and energy security and world security for our allies. This is yet another illegal action by the Biden administration being forced upon we the people. Mr. Chairman, I yield.
November 21, you were asked how many barrels of oil the U.S. consumes daily, and you didn't know at the time. You remember that?
I remember.
Okay. So, chance of redemption. How many barrels of oil do we consume every day?
We consume about, well, the world does 100, we do about 20. Again, these are ballpark.
Yeah, I just saw it on your website. It was on 102 and 22. So the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, we were talking about that before, founded, I believe, it was 1975. And do you know at the height, and I think one of my colleagues just asked you, at the height of the prior administration, what the number was?
It was, well, I can tell you that the maximum is about 720.
Right. And under the Trump administration, at one point, it was at 695 million barrels. When you all took office, do you have any idea where it was at?
What was it at?
I believe it was 638. And today it's at, you just said 365, I think?
365.
Okay. So it's a 42% reduction. And you testified before I came into the committee that it was the Ukrainian war had something to do with the sale. That wasn't accurate because 50 million barrels was sold in November of 21 before the invasion. And then you just said, when I did get here, that it was congressionally mandated, but according to the Congressional Research Service, the congressionally mandated is only a fraction of that 270 million. Are you aware of that?
There was 140 million in congressionally mandated sales that we have canceled to be able to get back. And then there's another 99 million that is teed up to go.
But that congressionally mandated, some of that was canceled was for FY 24 to 27, was it not?
Right, yeah, it's multiple years.
So I'm talking about what actually has physically happened. We have sold 270 million barrels. That was not, those 270 million barrels were not, the majority of that was not congressionally mandated sales.
Well, because we've canceled, because we've ended up canceling.
But
my point is,
we're going around in circles, but that cancellation was from sales that would have occurred in the future, not what has already happened in the past.
Correct, correct.
So if it wasn't Ukraine and it wasn't congressionally mandated.
It was Ukraine. 160 million, 180 million barrels were from the Ukraine war, the war in Ukraine.
No, you did it after they happened to have invaded, but that wasn't the reason. I think the reason was because you were trying to depress the price of gasoline at the pump.
There was a constriction on the global market.
Excuse me, I'm reclaiming my time. I'm not going to be interrupting you. It was before the midterm elections in November. Because this, in 1975, was designed for, I don't know, act of God, natural disaster, national emergency, time of war, none of which has occurred in this country, and 270 million barrels were sold inexplicably. And it's, by the way, I don't think that, was it your testimony that we have the largest reserve, strategic petroleum reserve in the world?
Yeah.
Not China?
We have the largest in the world. That's publicly made available.
Okay, so the Chinese don't have a billion barrels in reserve?
They don't publicly report what they have.
Okay, because that's what the experts believe that is. So we have a fraction of what they have.
Well, I don't know what they have.
Okay. So over the past 20 years, has the United States increased or decreased our carbon footprint?
Over the past?
20 years, 20,
yes,
20.
we've decreased.
We decreased it by about 20%. Has China increased or decreased?
They've increased, sir.
Increased by, you have any idea?
I don't know their percentage.
I'm talking Energy 101. I'm not going to get complicated.
Oh, I don't have the percentage in front of me.
Triple, about 300%. So we've done exceptionally well. So would you agree that the United States has a greater commitment to protecting the environment than, let's say, China?
I think we have a greater commitment to protecting the environment than China, yes.
Yeah, I think that's manifestly obvious considering what they've done in the last 25 years or so. And incidentally, for the record, our economy is larger than theirs, and yet they are far more apt to, unfortunately, ignore their responsibilities for the environment. Do you think that we have a greater commitment to protect the environment than, let's say, Venezuela?
I think we have a greater commitment to protecting the environment, yes.
Yeah, and gutter as well?
Yes.
Okay. Because we have a strong environmental lobby, we have a rule of law. None of those countries have those kinds of things. So it perplexes me that we would put essentially a ban, people call it a pause, on liquefied natural gas exports, and we're just giving a gift to one of the most evil dictators in the world, Vladimir Putin.
We are not giving a gift to Vladimir Putin. We are pausing for months while we update a study, and it will resume after that update happens.
Oh, I bet you it's going to resume magically right after the November elections, but be that as it may, I've talked to prime ministers and foreign ministers in Europe, and they're not happy with this at all. I hope that you talk to the same people.
I have talked to them, and they've explained, and